The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? Welcome back to the Paper Trails podcast. I'm your host, Nick Caligaris-Mitros, and I am super pumped to have you guys on, what are we, Season 3, Episode 14. Man, exciting stuff here. I have my friend Andres from Custom Shop. We are in the Elizabeth area of Charlotte, and so we are very excited to just, interview him and tell his story and his journey in entrepreneurship, and super pumped to have him on the podcast. Thank you for coming on, Andres.
Thanks for having
Appreciate
me.
it. And so, anyway, I guess like any other podcast, let's maybe start in the beginning. Let's start where you're from. Are you from Charlotte?
Nope.
Okay,
So
tell us the origin story.
I'm from Miami, so born and raised in Miami. My family is all from Spain, but my mom was born in Cuba, raised in Spain. So my mom moved to Spain when she was 12 years old, when Fidel Castro happened in Cuba.
Wow.
With her family. But her parents, like my grandparents, were born in Spain. They moved to Cuba to start a tobacco farm, and then made their way back to Spain when Fidel Castro happened.
So your mom was born in
Cuba.
Born in Cuba, but
raised in Spain.
Okay.
From the age of 12 on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of, I'm assuming more Spanish and Spain influence than anything?
Yeah, predominantly Spain
influence.
The majority of my Cuban influence comes from Miami.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you gone back to either Cuba or Spain? Actually, can you go back to Cuba?
You can now.
Okay.
It's definitely not something I would entertain because I feel like you're supporting the communist government, which is a conversation for another day.
Sure.
Spain, I go almost every year.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Favorite spots in Spain, real fast? Side note?
Favorite city to visit, Madrid.
Okay.
Favorite place to visit, Llanes, Asturias, is like incredible.
Is that like what's?
So Asturias is one of the provinces on the coast.
Okay.
It's like really like northeast coast, and Llanes is essentially it's everything you could ask for in one town. It's a very small town in this province, and it's a coastal mountainous town. So you have like beaches where the water is freezing, but it's beautiful. And then just like incredible landscapes, mountains, and arguably the best food in Spain. So
Love it. Note to self: if you're going to Spain, stop by and ask Andres where to go. Okay. So anyway, all right. So mom born in Cuba, Fidel Castro, whole thing. Okay, we're in Spain. She was raised there.
Yep.
How did Miami? How did the leap happen?
So my parents met in Madrid. They got married in Madrid. Both of them were studying chemistry, and they had an opportunity to pursue PhDs in Puerto Rico. So they originally, both of them moved to Puerto Rico to pursue a doctorate in chemistry. My mother ended up just pursuing a master's. My dad ended up pursuing a doctorate, and then they went from Puerto Rico to then pursue a further doctorate in Texas at UT, and then from Texas made their way to Miami, where my dad got his first job at the University of Miami.
Highly educated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of science.
Well, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
What was that like growing up? Just curious now, like with, masters, PhDs, high levels of education. Just normal family, or did you all have like science family? I don't know. I'm curious, actually. Just
normal for the most part.
Okay.
But academics was always a pretty like heavy focus. Like
I can see that.
Yeah, they were very keen on like me going to school, doing well in school, studying, and all that. No, they never pushed me to like get a doctorate in chemistry, for example. But yeah, they were very keen on like me going to school, getting a degree, doing what I needed to do.
Okay. So no culinary background at all in the family?
So the only culinary background in my family is my great-grandmother Marina, who owned and operated a restaurant in Spain called Casa Albarin. That is it. There is no other restaurant, food, culinary experience whatsoever. That being said, there's plenty of fantastic cooks in my family.
Oh, sure.
Just none of them that did it professionally.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, how did you always know that you liked? Give us your food. Like Andres in high school. Like, did you work at a restaurant? And like, how was it helping grandma cook? I mean, or mom cook? What was it that kind of sparked your interest in like pursuing this as a career?
So, I mean, my parents split up at a young age. Like when I was 3 years old, my parents split up. My dad remarried to an incredible woman. My stepmom is awesome. Also a chemist. So, and then we were raised by my mom. My mom had custody. So I have a twin sister. So there's that. And then, which, I'm now being a new parent, I can understand the challenges of trying to raise 2 kids at once, especially the same age. I don't even want to imagine that.
Yeah.
But she did it. But my mom was very meticulous. So, and probably where I get most of my OCD from. So every week she had like menus written down, and then she would go shopping to like stock everything up for those menus, and then she would execute those menus to a T every week. So like we ate at home often. Almost always. Like going out to eat was like a rarity for us when we were younger. And my mom was like very strict about like making sure we ate like nutritious whole foods, like no soda in the house, anything like that, no sweet stuff, none of that. So, and she was was and still is an incredible cook. So really like my love for food came from just like being spoiled is what I would say. Like I was fortunate that I always got to eat really good home cooked meals. I would watch my mom make these meals and I would eat them, and I love eating. Yeah. So it's like
me too.
Yeah. But that's where my love for food came from. It's like just loving to eat, and then the older that I got, and like when I was like, I would say by the time I was like a sophomore, I would watch the Food Network sometimes, and I would catch interest into like how things were made, and I started asking more questions because I was older. I was less of like a teenage like jerk. Yeah. So I would actually like take interest in how my mom made things and understanding the process that went into it. And really truthfully, it's like, people laugh when I say this, but like really what got me to understand that like I could cook professionally was the Food Network. Because like I had no idea that you could make a career out of that. I had never really thought of it. And like it had never clicked in my head that like you could be a chef and make money. Yeah. The Food Network kind of like glorified chefs, right? And I never wanted to have a TV show or anything like that. That was never my goal. Sure. But through watching the Food Network, I started to learn about other good restaurants and people doing these things to high levels of success, which really like intrigued me. So that got me to take my first job at a restaurant, which my first job at a restaurant was at Anna Capri on Miracle Mile in Miami. It's a really small Italian restaurant. I started off as a dishwasher and working garde manger, like both, a little bit of both. And I like instantly fell in love, like with working in a restaurant. I fell in love with getting paid to do something more so than like going to school and being forced to like sit in a classroom and then having to go home and have homework that you got no sort of reward for, just a letter and potential scholarships and whatnot. So I fell in love with the concept of like, if I do something, I'm going to make money. So I really liked that. And also it was just like, I was always a much more like physical learner. So I enjoyed like learning things from the chef, getting to do something, repeating that over and over again and getting better at that over and over again. Even if it was like washing dishes, like just getting faster at something, I thoroughly enjoyed. I
love that. Yeah. Two things real fast. First thing, I find this, just side note, so fascinating how much, and I think your story probably isn't unique, where somebody sees something on TV or a show or something and it inspires something in them, whether it's like HGTV and like houses or decorating or flipping, and it's like, you know what, it just shows you the power of your eyes and what you see and what you observe with, and what can inspire, like on a good side. I know, sometimes media can, get some bad rap or, there's a negative side to it, but I'm like, on the positive side, maybe somebody that never had an example of somebody succeeding can see Instagram and success and say, you know what, maybe I can win. Right. Maybe I can succeed at a high level. Maybe I can, you know what I mean? Yeah, or maybe I can own a business, whatever. Yeah. So I think that's just fascinating. I side note, mom's favorite dish?
My mom's favorite?
Yeah, or your favorite dish that mom made.
That she makes?
Or what she's known for. Is there anything that your mom's known for?
Her arroz con leche is like unreal. So it's just like rice pudding essentially, but it's unreal.
I love that.
Very, very good.
I love that. Okay, so first job, Little Italian restaurants.
Little Italian restaurant.
Okay, you're starting from the bottom.
Yeah, I like quit. I quit playing sports. So I played soccer and football in high school, and I stopped playing sports so that I could start working in restaurants.
Wow.
At this point, before I got my first job, I had already started to do research as to like where my parents were very strict on school, so they wanted me to get a culinary degree if that's what I wanted to do. They were like, cool, you're gonna go and you're gonna apply to the best
some kind of
culinary
degree.
school. Yeah.
And so for you, it was gonna be culinary.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They were like, you're gonna apply to the best culinary schools in the country, and then hopefully you get in, and then you'll go to culinary school and get a culinary degree, and then do whatever you want. You just gotta get a degree. And I was like, all right, cool. So
and they're saying this at like freshman, sophomore year in high school, like
sophomore year.
like already that you're gonna. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah, sophomore year, and then so we did some research. We traveled, visited some schools. The Culinary Institute of America was at that time, and I think still, the best culinary school in the country.
It's in New York, right?
Correct, Hyde Park, New York.
Okay.
But in order to get into the Culinary Institute of America, you needed to have restaurant experience.
Okay.
Which they don't require that anymore.
Okay. Do you think it was good that they required?
I think it's wild that they don't require it anymore.
Okay.
It's sad, but I think institutions require tuition and money to like continue to operate.
So more students. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
The more flow they have, the better for them. So
question real fast: at your first experience in the restaurants,
yeah,
big learning experience. I mean, you're going from zero to now.
Oh, yeah.
Learning. What are some things off the bat that you're learning? You're learning like knife skills, prep. I mean, what are you're learning? Just the environment, the stress, the length. I mean, you're learning everything.
Everything, primarily like how to act in a kitchen. So like the language, like what to say, when to say it, how to say it. Basic knife skills, obviously.
Yeah.
And the most important thing that I learned was cleanliness. Like how to be clean. Like it's fascinating in a professional kitchen how dirty things can get. And knowing how to properly clean and how to like work clean as you go was probably one of the first like foundational things I learned.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's, my parents own restaurants. They're just calabash seafood style restaurants.
Right.
Very informal. But yeah, man, it's like I think you never know the stress and the amount of just pressure on a Friday, Saturday night. It's like you're either for restaurants or you're not. Like you're a restaurant person or you're not.
Right.
Because it is, just ticket times and pushing food out and just fixing a plate. I mean, it is a very, I mean, to this day I still help out on the weekends, in the kitchen if they need me, and it's just. It's not easy.
No,
it's not easy at all. So, okay, so you're there at the Italian restaurant for how long? A couple of years, like while you're in school?
I was there. I would essentially work part time, and I would work after school.
Okay.
So I was there. I was at Anacapri for a good amount of like 6 months or so.
Okay, so short time.
Yeah.
But did you go to a different restaurant, or what'd you do after?
I would say total time 6 months, but there was times when I had to stop working because of school.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, like I would say about total amount of time 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, did you work anywhere else, or after that was it New York?
Anacapri was the only culinary experience I had prior to going to New York.
Okay.
So.
Now you're in culinary school. Reflecting back now at your time there, what are some big takeaways? What are some big things that you're learning? Is it the nutritional details, chemistry, that side that maybe you did? Was it the actual make? Was it I don't know, the creativity? What are some things looking back that you're like, I think it was worth going to culinary school because of this? Is there anything that stands out to you that you're like, what?
So I would say high level, I don't think the money is worth going to culinary school because culinary school is extremely expensive.
Okay.
But I will say that there are certain things that you learn in culinary school that you could learn on your own or you could learn through working in restaurants, but that I learned in culinary school that facilitated it for my experience to be more suitable when I graduated. So I like product knowledge classes, so like learning, there's like 30 something types of apples, and like knowing which ones are which, what they're good for, all those intricate details. The wine class that I took in culinary school was one of the hardest classes I've ever taken in my life.
Wow.
And super educational. Definitely like restaurant law was also a tough class, but
Restaurant law?
Restaurant law.
I've never heard of that.
tough class, a lot of reading, but very like informative in terms of like the liabilities that you can face as a business owner in restaurants,
class.
which was super educational.
Yeah.
And then, like menu development and food costing was also another good class that I took, because, they teach you how to cost out recipes, what makes sense, why would you price something, so on.
Yeah.
Which is not a difficult thing to learn and figure out. It's simple business, but
You'd be surprised.
I mean, I know. Some people are like, how do you figure this out? And I'm like, it costs this, you charge that. What are your margins? But, I learned that in those classes. So I would say that was like fundamental. And then like, basic etiquette you learn in culinary school. Like you have to be clean shaven. You have to be in uniform, proper uniform.
Yeah.
Your uniform has to be clean. You can't be like looking like a slob. If you look like a slob, they send you home. You can't miss class. If you miss more than 2 classes, because the classes were like 3-week installments. If you missed 2 days in a class, you had to retake the class.
Wow.
Yeah, so absenteeism is like very strict.
So very disciplined.
Oh, extremely disciplined. I tell people all the time, I'm like, it was like Hogwarts. Like everyone is dressed the same.
Yeah.
Everyone's studying the same thing. It's super like to the core, like disciplined, and they're just like teaching you how to, fundamental tasks and fundamental like core values that later translate for the rest of your career.
How long is the school for?
So you can either do, so the associate's program is 2 years, and that's like the pretty much like the strong culinary piece of that program, and it ends with a 6-month stint, what they call restaurant row, where you work in the restaurants at the school, which is probably the most informative and like beneficial part of that entire program, because it's like real life training front and back of the house. And then after those 2 years, if you wanted to stay for your bachelor's, you could. So, but it's another 2 years of like academic classes. I left after my first 2 years.
Gotcha.
I did my associates, and then I moved back to Miami. I went to FIU to pursue a hospitality degree.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which I did not complete.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, I didn't know this until it was actually a chef friend of mine in an earlier podcast years ago that I didn't know that you could become a chef without going to culinary school, but just through training, like just through. I didn't know that.
Through hard work.
So I think it's interesting how you talked about that. There's one side of the actual school, and that's one path, but a different path can be just actual grinding, training, learning, apprentice under somebody, probably, however that works. But anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Any reason you wanted to get another degree? I mean, you just wanted to be a little more versatile and have a little more education under your belt?
My parents were very insistent on me having a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
At least,
Gotcha.
before I did anything. So I felt it better to go back to a lot of the credits from culinary school wouldn't transfer over to like standard programs.
Yeah.
So to me, it was more beneficial to go back to FIU, which at the time had the second best hospitality school next to Cornell in the country. So I felt it better to go back to FIU, get a degree from FIU, which would then potentially, if I ever at any moment decided to switch careers, I at least had credits that would transfer over to another program.
That makes sense.
So, we made the decision together, and we all thought that was what was best. Okay. I would be at home, so I'd be saving money on room and board.
Yep.
So I went back to Miami.
Cool.
And then started remedial math and English classes.
I hated English. Oh my gosh. Anyway, all right. So you finished school, 2 years, 6-month training, front of house, back of the house up there. Very educational.
Yep.
You're learning law, menu, cost, all that. Finish, move back to Miami, start that school. Don't finish, not a big deal. Okay. What is your first experience? First restaurant job? Like first, I guess, starting your career. Where's it at?
So midway through culinary school, they have what they call an externship, which is just a fancy word for an internship.
Okay.
They call it an externship because you do it off-site. And it's after your first year. So after my first year, you essentially go wherever you want for about 6 months, and you do this externship, and you work at a restaurant, and you choose.
Okay.
I had 2 choices. One was El Bulli in Spain, where I felt like I was going to be peeling carrots the whole time, so I decided not to. It was a tough decision because at that time it was the best restaurant in the world.
What is it called?
El Bulli.
El Bulli?
Doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
But at that time it was the best restaurant in the world. Very innovative, thought-forward restaurant. So they had accepted me, but I really legitimately thought I was going to be peeling or cutting carrots the whole time. And then my other choice was this restaurant in Miami at the time called Norman's, working for Norman Van Aken, which at that time was a very well-known and famous chef, still very well-known, famous chef, incredible human being too. So I decided to go back home, and I took the internship at Norman's. It was about a month and a half into my internship at Norman's. Norman made the announcement that he was closing that restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I ended up transferring my internship to another restaurant in Miami called Wish, which no longer exists anymore, but was on South Beach in this small boutique hotel called The Hotel on 8th and Collins. And the chef at the time was Michael Blois, who had just been had just been named one of the best new chefs by Bon Appetit magazine, who ended up being one of the most influential chefs of my career.
Wow.
So I did that. He threw me directly on the hotline as an intern. I got my ass handed to me on a platter for about 3 weeks, almost a month.
Okay.
But I left that experience a completely changed person, cook, employee, everything.
Talk about that. What just
different times.
like so different times.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, just
Tough
expectations, yelling,
Yeah.
perfection,
Yeah.
like the whole thing.
We'll call it tough love.
Okay.
For the sake of keeping it PG, but tough love, but I mean, like, tough love that, quite honestly, like, I need it.
Yeah.
Without that tough love, I wouldn't be who I am today.
100%.
You know what I mean? So he really helped me become a man.
Wow.
Cause like, it was tough. Like, I mean, there was times when I went home and I was like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, this is not fun, but then I got better, and then it got fun, and then I would feel the respect from him, and like something as simple as like when I was going to leave, him telling me, you're going to be missed, and if you want a job here when you get back, it's yours.
Wow.
So like little things like that meant the world to me. But he really he was the first chef that really like made me like a man. Like he made me develop a thick skin. He made me realize that nothing was going to be handed to me on a platter. Really changed me. And when I got back to culinary school, I was a different person. Like, I was a different person.
It was like proper boot camp.
I mean, I was running circles around everybody when I got back.
Really?
Oh yeah.
And you were there for how long? 6 months?
6 months. Yeah.
So, I mean, the experience that you got there, especially under him, I'm sure was just, I mean,
to this day, there's things that I coach my cooks on to this day that he coached me on when I was, at that time, 18. So like, on how to like cut things, on how to like think, on how to organize yourself. I mean, he was a hoss. Like,
really?
Yeah, he was a hoss.
Is he still a chef? Is he still around?
He now designs kitchens. But he's also a father of 2.
Is he still in Miami?
Yeah, he's still in Miami. I think he lives in like Hollywood. But we stay in touch.
I was going to ask, are you guys still in touch?
Yeah, and he's incredible. Like he designs kitchens.
What's
now,
his name?
Michael Blois.
Michael Blois.
He works for Cheney Brothers and like their like restaurant design sector, and like helps design restaurant kitchens professionally, which he's very good at because he's very smart.
Is he much older than us? How old is he?
Man, I don't know Michael's exact age, but he's probably, I would assume, in his
late 40s?
He's probably in his 50s already. Yeah, it's like early 50s.
What is your? I mean, this is it's kind of a side question, but it kind of sparks something in me. What are your thoughts on tough love? Like, I don't know, man. I think there's something to, especially a guy. I mean, obviously we can speak on that. Like, to have somebody have such standards and expectations that just makes you better. Like, I don't know. I love that for some reason.
I mean, coming from firsthand experience, it made me who I am today. So I don't regret it. I think it was super beneficial for me. I think it could be super beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We live in a different time now.
That's true.
It's a different culture in restaurants. Mental health is like at the forefront. There was a lot of times during that time frame that my mental health was not at its best.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of like how to go about it, you know? But I don't regret any of it. I do think it's great. I think it's necessary in some cases. I think enablement is a problem. And I
agree.
think you see that a lot, especially with like younger cooks who like graduate culinary
a little bit.
Yeah, graduate culinary school or like, I'm ready to be a chef or a sous chef.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, you got to, again, there's like a difference between you got to pay your dues and you got to earn it.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a fine line. So.
I think I definitely like what you said. I think you could probably, in a more tactful and finesse way, give tough love, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
I mean, I don't let things slide,
Yeah.
you know, just because you have to be nice. There's right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very easy to tell someone in a calm, cool, collected way, you're wrong.
Yep.
And don't do that again, you know?
Or, you know, hey, this is what I would have done in this situation.
Correct.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So 6 months.
6 months back to
Chef
school.
Michael
Yep.
teaches you, changes you.
Completely.
You're back.
Yep.
You know, where does your story go from there?
So back to culinary school, we did all of our like international classes in the second year, and then you finish off with that restaurant row piece. I picked, at that point I was very confident, so I picked the hardest restaurants in restaurant row, which at that time was Caterina de Medici, which was the Italian restaurant, which got absolutely crushed every day. And then Auguste Escoffier restaurant, which was the French restaurant in the culinary school, so now has been changed to Bocuse as the name. But yeah, so I picked those 2 restaurants for my restaurant row. I got selected for those restaurants. I was the group leader of my class.
Love it.
I got put on pasta station at Caterina de Medici and got my ass handed to me every day.
Was that like the toughest, the pasta station?
Yeah, so it would just get crushed.
At an Italian restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would just get crushed.
Okay.
You know, we were making gnocchi fresh every day, pasta fresh every day, and I mean, your station was depleted every day. So like every single day you came in and had to prep pretty much like from scratch. Super challenging, but super rewarding.
Yep.
Felt great, crushed it.
Yep.
Had no issues. And then Escoffier was also super like good experience to learn.
Okay.
You know?
And then you finish, and then, you know, where do you
Finish.
at?
FIU, remedial math and English classes, losing my mind, not cooking.
Yep.
I hate this sucks.
Yep.
I called up my sous chef from Wish, and I was like, hey, you guys hiring? And he was like, yeah. He was like, Michael's not the chef anymore. He was like, we just got a new chef. His name is Marco. And I was like, cool. He's like, I'll talk to Marco. I'll let him know you're interested. And this was the sous chef, Josh, at the point, who was one of the sous chefs that I had worked for. So he called me back. He's like, hey, why don't you come in and meet Marco? So went in, met Marco, super nice guy. Very unassuming, 2 very different chefs, right?
Okay.
Like I walked in and I thought Marco was the dishwasher. He was wearing like a little dishwasher jacket, just walking around the kitchen. I had no idea he was the chef. I went in, I said hi to Josh, and Josh was like, hey, this is Marco, the chef. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Hi, how are you? But cool, you know, like different perspectives.
Yeah.
And Marco was also an incredible influence in my career. From like how I cook today, nowadays, to just like how I carry myself in the kitchen. Because Michael gave me that tough love that I needed at the time.
Yeah.
Marco was more like going to be your like, you know, he's going to be your promoter. He's going to be there to like support you, tell you that you're doing a good job. Yeah. You know, like he's going to support, he's going to talk to you about like other stuff, like life things and stuff when you're like, what are your plans? Like, are you going to invest money in this? Are you going to do this? Like,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, kind of like a big brother, you know, like that was kind of the sense
mentor.
I got. Yeah, 100%. Much more mentor.
One's a coach, one's a mentor.
Correct.
Okay.
You know, and it was incredible. And at that time, I met Brian Nasajan, who ended up becoming one of my business partners later on. But we worked for Marco together for almost 3 years.
Okay.
We worked at Wish together for 2 years. And then after 2 years at Wish, Brian got promoted to be the sous chef at Wish. Me and another cook, Dan, got sent to go open Wynwood Kitchen and Bar, which was the first restaurant to ever open in, second restaurant really to ever open in Wynwood, which is now just like Wynwood.
Yeah.
And yeah, we opened that restaurant, which was a doozy. First restaurant opening for me, super busy. I mean, that place would get absolutely crushed all the time, especially for like, they had like an art walk every, I think it was like the first Friday of every month, and it was just super busy. That's where they had all like the street art and all that. People would come around, walk around.
I just recently went to Miami, so like for the second time. What are some things that you learned about opening a restaurant that maybe like no one is even considering or thinking about as far as just, I don't know, like, is anything that one or two things that stand out to you, like, you know what, I didn't even think about that, but this was a hurdle, or this was anything that stands out to you?
There's never enough storage, like, no matter what.
So don't underestimate.
Don't ever underestimate storage. So like when we opened Wynwood Kitchen and Bar, the walk-in was not big enough. So we ended up having to operate with and I had nothing to do with the design. I was too young at that point. But they designed the restaurant with not enough space in the walk-in. We had a small walk-in, like essentially the same size walk-in that I have here, but the restaurant was 3 times the size.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was not enough cold storage for all the product that we needed to store in order to be able to properly maintain inventory levels.
And you found that out like opening, like first week, first couple
week.
Days?
Yeah, first couple days.
You're just like, man, this is not going to work.
Nope. So we ended up talking to Cisco. Cisco provided a refrigerated truck outside that lived outside until we added more storage in the back of the restaurant. We ended up adding some additional like reach-in coolers and a secondary space in like this back courtyard area, which was just... It's not fun operating a restaurant when you just open, having to walk in and out of a refrigerated truck to like make sure you have enough produce. You know?
I mean, that makes total sense.
Right.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you're there for how long at Wynwood at that location?
I was at Wynwood Kitchen and Bar for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And then Marco left the company. They hired a new chef. Me and that chef weren't necessarily too keen with each other. So I figured it was best for me to move on to a different opportunity. So I ended up taking a cook job at that point. So I took a pay cut and took a cook job to work at the Epic Hotel in Miami at Area 31, working for Michael Reed, who was also a huge influence in my career.
Real fast on that. So I think something that we should point out is the power and the importance of having good camaraderie, right? Like if you're looking to own a business with somebody or build a team, like, there's got to be some chemistry, man. Like, you can't overlook that. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you went from opening a restaurant 1.5 years, you Marco making things happen. Yep. You know, different guy comes in, and it's like, man, like,
super different.
Yeah, like this. You knew that this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important if you guys are watching this. I don't care what industry you're in.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a landscaper. I don't care. But I think camaraderie, team dynamics. I think that's a thing.
Yeah. So Michael Reed, actually, the chef that I ended up working for at Area 31, mentor of mine, still is, gave me the best advice a long time ago. And it's that harboring relationships and like investing into relationships is the most important thing that you're going to do regardless for the rest of your career.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter what you're doing, what job is in the culinary industry, like, you have to harbor those relationships.
Yep. Same thing I heard a long time ago. I think it's the number one investment that will never go down is investing in people.
Correct.
They will always appreciate.
Human equity, man.
That's it.
Human equity.
Okay. So Michael, Area
31.
31. Yeah. You're there. That's the next step. Are you there for a little while, or
I was there for about 2 years.
Okay.
So we had, I would argue at that moment, probably one of the strongest lines in Miami. Everyone that was on that line.
Solid?
Yeah, everyone that was on that line is now a chef somewhere.
Wow.
So, yeah, we just had a really good line. It was busy. Great experience for me. I learned a lot about food. The sous chef at the time, his name is Ben Murray, is one of my best friends today. Just developed some great relationships over that time. And then from that experience, I was in a relationship at the time with someone who was not supportive of like my schedule, my nighttime schedule.
Yeah.
So I started looking for a daytime job, and I ended up taking a very short stint at a hospital as a sous chef, which was the worst experience I've ever had in my career.
Okay.
And we won't touch into it too much, but hospitals are gross, and then especially when it comes to food. And then and it was a union hospital also, which made it even worse. So like, you're a sous chef, but you have no power. And then from that job, I ended up switching to another job, which I thought would be like one step up, but also a daytime job. I took a sous chef position at an independent living facility, so where older folk are still able to like roam around, and they had like breakfast and lunch a la carte, and then we had like a sit-down banquet-style dinner every day. A little bit better in terms of food. They fired the chef the first week that I was there, offered me the executive chef position.
1 week in?
Oh yeah. Asked me if I thought I could do it. I said, sure. I was young at that time. I was 24. I was like, yeah, I can do it. and I did it for 2 years.
Okay, question real fast. Sorry to interrupt you. Did you 100% think that you were ready for that position?
Yeah.
Or did you just have enough belief in yourself, like, you know what, I'm going to figure this out?
Choice B.
Okay, and the only reason I say that is because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people, Andres, that just need to, you know what, you're not going to know everything.
Right.
I think in any venture that you start, there's a part of the unknown.
Yeah.
You have some ideas, but you really don't.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just taking the leap sometimes and figuring it out along the way and having that mentality, I'm going to make this work. Like, I don't know how I'm going to be the exec here at this, but I'm going to figure this out. I think, man, there's some power to that.
I think it's also just a matter of like understanding that like you're gonna be okay, like you're gonna make mistakes, and that's fine. You'll learn from those mistakes, and you'll never make them again if you're smart. You know? So to me, it was just like I knew that I could do the job. Did I know that I could excel at the job? No. I thought that I would learn and I would do my best, which I felt was good and better than what they currently had in that situation. And I didn't think I was ready to be in like meetings with like the board and speak the language that they were speaking and all that business talk and budgets and all that stuff, but I learned it all as I did it.
I love that. Good for you.
I mean, that part was the more intimidating
24
part
years
for me.
old, man? Wow. Like,
Well, 24 years old sitting in a room with a guy who owns, I mean, at that time it was the Palace. It was the most expensive independent living facility in South Florida. You know, they were essentially borderline billionaires, and I was like, in a meeting with them talking about the budget for the year, and I was like, I have no idea what the budget should be for the year.
Yeah.
No clue, you know? But whatever, I'll do my best.
I mean, what a learning experience.
It was.
Like, that's awesome.
From a business perspective, it was definitely an educational experience for me.
Love that.
And definitely helped me grow in the respect of like being in that room, having those conversations, taking place in that. But I did it for 2 years. They never gave me a raise. So I left.
Yep. Good for you.
Yeah, I left.
For knowing your self-worth.
Correct. Left, hopped around for a little bit, ended up calling Brian, who was who's like a brother to me. And then he was in the process of opening a restaurant in Wynwood.
Okay.
And he asked me if I wanted to be his sous chef, and I said, sure, let's do it. So he hired me. He ended up promoting me to his executive sous chef and a partner. And then we opened up Beaker & Gray in Wynwood, which was very, very, very successful for a long time.
What years did you and him partner up and start this restaurant?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah, 2015.
So not that long ago.
Nope.
Just a handful of years ago.
Yeah, 2015, we opened Beaker & Gray. It was very successful. We ended up opening another restaurant in Miami. We had a commissary kitchen at the time, and that's when I made the decision that I wanted to leave Miami. So
Why?
I had visited my twin sister who went to UNC at Chapel Hill and graduated with a pharmacy degree and bought a house in Raleigh. And when I found out what she bought a house for in Raleigh, I was like, cool. I'm out.
Now, but you love Miami, but you were thinking ahead.
I mean, Miami's home, and Miami will always be home. It feels like home every time I land in the airport and I hear a Cuban lady yelling. Like, I mean, it does. It's like literally, you get off the plane, you hear someone talking, you smell Cuban coffee. It just like if you feel it in your veins. There's no way to like.
My first experience in Miami was a couple of years ago. It was my brother. We were going on a bachelorette, co-ed.
Nice.
We're all going down there together. 12 or 15 of us. We had a blast. We were at the Fontainebleau Hotel. Just beautiful. And we get off the plane and we find this like I don't even know, this like, you know, a quesadilla food truck right by the airport. And we're eating quesadillas, drinking some Coke out of a bottle.
Yeah.
And planes were flying over us. And I'm like, it was like the quintessential, like the food was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, Coca-Cola out of a bottle is next level.
Yeah.
Like you're crying because there's so much, you know, carbonation in it. And I was, it was the cool, dude. I had such a good time.
Yeah.
So it just, but you know, like you said, you started flying and kind of, you know, hearing the Cuban lady.
It's a special place. Like it's very unique. Like people all the time ask me like, talk to me about Miami, explain it. I'm like, it's hard to explain. You just gotta like.
Honestly, it really is different than anywhere
like
else
its
I've
own
ever
country.
visited. It
It's
really
crazy.
is, though.
It's like its own place. You do not feel like you're in the U.S. It's like so diverse culturally. So many different kinds of like Hispanic culture, Haitian culture. It's crazy.
I love it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I love it.
so let's fast forward a little bit. Twin sister,
Yep.
Chapel Hill Pharmacy, Raleigh.
Yep.
You're visiting. You like the
Yeah.
area. You move.
I liked the cost of living.
Okay.
I had also eaten at several restaurants in Raleigh, and I was
Okay.
like, "Oh, there's really good food here."
Okay.
And then the thing that attracted me the most was when I walked through the first farmers market I had walked through, which was the Raleigh Regional Farmers Market, which is the size of a football field.
It's big.
It's huge.
Was it a weekly thing?
Yeah, and it's open. It was open. I think it's open 6 days a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huge. It's like Charlotte Regional here, but better. I would say the Raleigh Regional Farmers Market's a little
Wow.
bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was just like dumbfounded by the quality of the produce, the amount, like just abundance of produce, and the agriculture scene in North Carolina. I was like, man, like it can't be that hard to cook here if you have accessibility to products like this, you know?
Ingredients that are such high quality.
Yeah. You know, my goal had always been to like open my own thing. I had helped friends of mine open things and stuff. I had opened things for other people. So my goal was always to do that. So my wife and I met, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. At the retirement home, I met my now wife.
Okay.
And mother of my daughter.
Absolutely.
Best thing that's ever happened to me. Best thing that came from that experience too. So we basically made the decision. We were engaged at the time. We made the decision. We were like, let's do it. Let's leave Miami. She was 100% supportive.
On
Has
board,
always
huh?
been.
That's awesome.
Still is. And then, so I took the job as the chef de cuisine at the Durham Hotel.
Okay.
To work for Andrea Rusing at the time. And I was like, cool. She was a James Beard winner. I was like, I'm gonna learn so much, and I did. I learned so much. It was an incredibly.
What did you learn?
Developing relationships with farmers. I had never really like dealt with like farms directly
Gotcha,
in Miami.
Gotcha.
So like getting lists from farmers, understanding that I'm going to order 3 things from one person, 4 things from another person, 6 things from someone else, only ordering basic things from produce companies. It was just like a whole new world for me.
Okay.
Being in a meeting where we were talking about how many cows we were going to kill that year, I was like, I don't know. I've never had a conversation for how many cows we kill, because they would essentially, they dealt with farms directly. They dealt with a company called First Hand Foods, where every year they would have a meeting and be like, how many cows do you want allocated for the hotel? 'Cause
Wow.
we would buy whole cows. They would send us whole cows broken down into primals and pieces. We would dry age the ribeyes to serve a dry aged ribeye in the restaurant, and then we would dry age other parts to grind for the burger that we served there, and then other parts of the cow we would use for like charcuterie and stuff like that. It was like crazy.
Fantastic restaurant, sounds like.
Oh yeah, incredible. I mean, and like Andrea Rusing is one of the most talented cooks I've ever worked for. She was like incredible and super knowledgeable about like farms, and honestly just one of the most kind-hearted people that would support farms to no avail.
Good for her.
Yeah, incredible. It ended up being a pretty tumultuous experience for me, so I started looking for another job. And then that's where I interviewed for a position. I worked for Scott Crawford for a short period of time. During that time, I took a massive pay cut at that time in my life to just be a cook for Scott Crawford. He was in the process of opening other restaurants, and he was like, we're going to have management opportunities, we just don't have them now. And that's where I worked for what I would say is the second most talented line I've ever worked for in my life. Everyone on that line.
That's in Raleigh, in Durham?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crawford & Son is, in my opinion, the best restaurant in North Carolina.
What is it called?
Crawford & Son?
Crawford and Son?
Yeah.
Best restaurant in North Carolina?
In my opinion, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of restaurant is it?
Super similar to what we do here. Very similar, sourced locally, seasonal, neighborhood restaurant, but with extremely, like with elevated, elegant food in an approachable setting, and then just heightened hospitality, like incredible hospitality. So I worked for Scott Crawford for about 6 months. It was the most influential experience I've ever had in my career.
Wow.
So,
More so than Michael?
More so, yeah.
Wow.
Scott, so Scott's sober and has been, I think, now for 15 years.
Good for him.
And then just like his demeanor in the kitchen, like, I mean, I've never seen someone be more calm and assertive in the kitchen. He just like, you know, people talk now all the time about aura. like that dude has aura.
Really?
Yeah. Like, and I mean, just like his ethos on food and like how he would come up with dishes and everything about it, and just the culture in that kitchen was what really like stuck with me for the rest of my career. And like, it's how we operate now. I mean, the culture was like everybody respected each other. Everybody was serious about what was going on. I mean, just like heightened like kitchen culture.
So just a professional,
but still camaraderie and like still like fun and still everything about it, but focused, you know? Focused fun is probably the best way to put it.
Focused fun, I like that.
Yeah, and it was like incredibly like, it was the best pay cut I ever took, you know? And I did it for about 6 months, but then before I had worked for Scott, I had interviewed with a company, LM Restaurants, and this guy, Shang Skipper. And I had interviewed for an executive chef position at a Greek restaurant, but Greek is not my thing. Okay. So
Greek food's not your thing?
I mean, I love eating Greek food. Yeah. But the Greek restaurant it's called Taverna Agora, and it's like very simple Greek food. And I'm more like, you know, I like doing all sorts of stuff.
Intricate, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be like pinned to like one cuisine.
Gotcha.
You know? So I did a tasting for them at their other restaurant called Vidrio, which was like Mediterranean small plate.
This is still in Raleigh?
Yep.
Okay.
That's where I did my tasting. That's where I did all my interviews. They thought I would be a perfect fit for Vidrio, but they had just hired a chef for Vidrio. But I was interviewing for Taverna, and then Shang, who was the director of operations for the company at the time, was like, you should go visit Taverna. I don't think you're going to like it. And he was absolutely correct. I didn't like it. 2 minutes into
honest guy though, right?
Yeah.
He's like, listen, go, but
he's like, I think you're great. We'll hire you. You're going to hate it. And I was like, cool. I hated it. I did.
Brutal honesty.
Yeah.
Go. You're going to hate it, but you know what? You're right.
So I went, hated it. It was difficult for me. It was good money at the time.
Oh, you worked there?
No, I went just to like
just interview,
check the place out and stuff like that. It was difficult, but I turned down the offer politely. I was like, thank you so much. If there's ever an opportunity in the future, please let me know. I just don't think it's a good fit for me. He respected that. Whatever. 6 months at Crawford & Son. 5 months into my time at Crawford & Son, I get a call from Shang Skipper. Hey, we have an opening for a sous chef position at Vidrio. I was making, at that time, $15 an hour, which was enough. My wife and I, at that time, we were good, you know, and I was like, okay, this is a better opportunity for us, family-wise. Yeah. So it was, you know, a salary with benefits, 401k, the whole nine. Yeah. And I was like, I just can't say no. I spoke to Scott, and I was like, he was so kind about it. He's like, dude, I get it. He's like, you have no idea how much money I pay in health insurance. I get it, you know? So it was tough, but I gave Scott a month-long notice, which is kind of wild as a cook, but I felt it necessary because it gave him plenty of time. Worked out my month at Crawford & Son, left on fantastic terms, and then started at Vidrio. And then a week before I started at Vidrio, they informed me that they had their chef at the time was going to be moving on. So they extended the executive chef offer to me, which I took. Nice. And then I worked at Vidrio with Shang Skipper for about a year and a half-ish. And it's at Vidrio where I met Alex, who was the general manager at Vidrio, who is now my general manager and business partner here.
Okay.
Shang was the reason why I went to go work for that company. He's the guy that hired me. He's the guy I wanted to work for. He ended up leaving LM Restaurants after I think it was about like 6 months or so. And then he moved here to Charlotte, and he took the job as the president of Max Hospitality Group, which owns Max Speed Shop, Southbound, Backstage Lounge, all that. I was here at some point in the midst of all of that for an event. It was a Johnson & Wales event where I was judging a culinary competition, which was fun. And Shang and I always had a great rapport, so I was like, why don't we meet up and get coffee or something? So he asked me to meet him at a Max. We met, we just chat, had a good time, and then he was driving me back to my hotel, and on the way back to my hotel, he was like, hey, so, you know, my culinary director just gave notice. And he's like, you know, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, cool, so what are you going to do about it? And I was like, okay. So I was like, you know, Shang and I, at LM Restaurants, I had always like spoken to Shang, like I had made a decision at that point that my career was going to go one of two ways. I was either going to get on board with a big company and take like a corporate chef role, culinary director role, and do that and see if I like that, or I was just going to continue to work my way into my own place.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could achieve that with Shang, working with Shang, because we had a great relationship. So when he basically said that to me in his car, I was like, cool, let me talk to the wife, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So I interviewed all the 9. They offered me the position. It was by far the best salary that was ever been presented to me, and this was in February of 2020. So,
oh, wow.
yeah. So I was like, okay, I think this is a good opportunity. My wife came, we visited Charlotte. I was like, this feels more like a city to me than Raleigh. It feels a little bit more like Miami. It's definitely not Miami, but it feels a little bit more like Miami. It's more diverse, more culture, more things to do. So I was like, let's do it. So we moved here. We were here for a week, and then the world shut down.
Sheesh.
So,
Bro.
yeah, which was crazy. Because, new city, you can't do anything. For me, it was fine, because, like, Max stayed open. I had job security. Like, we were able to transition to, like, delivery to go for a company.
Yeah.
Mind you, this was a barbecue concept, not my thing either.
Yeah.
But, like, Shang and I had a good relationship working together, so.
Which just goes to show you how much good relationships lend to business or opportunities or anything like that, right?
Oh, yeah. So, basically the first, like, 6 months of my time at Max was spent in a car with Shane, going from store to store, making sure everybody was good with their delivery to go programs. Constant meetings about every adjustment with, like, COVID. Like, now you can seat 50% of your dining room. Now you can see patios and the whole 9. And, like, it was just like, man, what a roller coaster,
that was.
The toughest thing was that for my wife, it was brutal. Like, she couldn't work. She's a massage therapist. So she couldn't work, They couldn't physically touch people. And she was just home, like bored out of her mind, which was tough. I was working 12, 16 hours every day in the car, like nonstop, and she was just home. So she's a trooper during that time. But then, the world opened back up. I ended up staying at Max for almost 3 years. And then I spent the better part of the last 6 months of my time there looking for a location to open a restaurant. Because I was just like, I felt like Charlotte was a good place to do my own thing. Yeah. I felt like the culinary scene in Charlotte could use a little TLC and some love, and I felt like I could contribute to that. So,
love it.
I started looking at a bunch of second-gen spaces. Steven DeFalco moved here, who you know very well. Yeah. Steven ended up introducing me to Trey. We ended up just having a couple conversations, having some coffee, never really talked about anything, and then one thing led to the other, where one day we just started talking about potentially buying this. He showed it to me. I fell in love with it. I ate here. I loved the vibe at night. I was like, this is exactly what I would want in terms of like size of restaurant, kind of restaurant, all that stuff. To me, it was like incredible that it had been open for 15 years. And I was like, I would love to like keep the name and keep the brand, give the brand some new life, and like, take this restaurant into its next chapter. Sure. And that was always the goal. We ended up striking a deal, and the rest is history.
Love it, bro. And you took over when here?
I took over May of 2022.
May of 22, so just, a little over 2 years ago.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Taking over your own spot, like the first year. What are some things that you learned about, doing it on your own? Because, now it's all on your shoulders, right?
Yeah. The first, let's say the first 6 months, it was all on my shoulders. Okay. And then Alex...
we
brought Alex on board. Alex ended up buying out the last bit of Trey's shares, so Alex became my business partner also.
Gotcha.
And I'm so fortunate to have someone like him. He's like a brother to me, and I can trust him blindly. Which in business is, you cannot put a dollar figure on that. I get it. So, but the first 6 months were exhausting, so stressful. it was not cheap to buy this place. We put a lot of money into this place when we took it over. We put about somewhere in the range of like $100,000 into it, between remodeling the kitchen, remodeling the bar. The building needed some TLC, so taking care of things that needed to be fixed. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot coming up with a menu alone, like a good menu, and R&Ding it and working service and making sure that all that is going well, and then managing a bank account. And
I get it.
Learning about business taxes for the first time was arguably one of the most stressful times of my life. You can talk to my wife about it if you want. She will verbatim tell you that she has never seen me so stressed.
Yeah.
The IRS isn't something fun.
Yeah, you don't play games with the IRS.
So, I mean, and it's like, and my biggest fear at all times was like, I bought this business, what if something comes up? And like, fortunately enough, nothing came up, but I was like, there's things that are out of my control, and I was just like, I want to make sure that everything's buttoned up. It's our first go of it. We had some scares with like ABC being like, oh, there's an old tax bill of like $12 that never got paid, so we're gonna take away your alcohol permit unless if you pay those $12. And it's like, we're talking about something from 3 years ago. I'll pay it right now. Yeah. But like, don't threaten my license. Yeah. Just like crazy things like that. And like, the first time you go through those things, it's like nerve-wracking, because you're like, oh my God, they're gonna take away my license. They're gonna take away my license. I can't serve alcohol. We're screwed. Yeah. But then now those things happen, and you're like, whatever, we'll fix it. Let's go. It's not.
Keep it moving.
Yeah. It's now you don't get stressed about it. But the first time they happen, it's like,
because it's new to you.
Yeah. And it's so many new things.
Yeah.
Those first 6 months was just like thing after thing after thing, and you're just trying to like learn and move forward with it, and it's just like stressful, So
I get it.
It's just a lot of fear. It's a lot of fear because, my dad is also my primary business partner, and he believed in me and had faith in me and like put up a chunk of change.
Shout out to Pops.
Yeah, huge shout out to Pops. To like, help me buy this place. And, now to this day, he's like, it's the best investment I've ever made, which like to me is like, you can't put a dollar figure on how rewarding that is, to like be able to like have solidified that for my dad,
I
so
love
like,
that.
That part's huge to me, like for him to now be like, okay, cool, my son's restaurant is better than any other investment I've ever made, it's like awesome, because
good
like,
for you. I love that,
because like he spent a lot of money on me. So so it's like to be able to like kind of like return that is like so rewarding. So
do a real quick 30-second blurb. If somebody has never heard of Custom Shop, has never been here before, tell everybody about the menu, the style, the ambiance. We'll put some B-roll in there of kind of the restaurant and what it looks like. Give us some.
Custom Shop is a neighborhood restaurant through and through. That's what we strive to be. We have an elevated cocktail program that changes seasonally, strong wine program as well. And then when it comes to the food, it's, farm focused is the best way to say it. Whatever is growing locally, seasonally is going to be on the menu. When it comes to cuisine, we kind of pick from whatever we think will make sense to the ingredients. So heavy Spanish, Italian, and French influence, but there's definitely some influence, some Asian influence here and there. Whatever we think will work best, and we try to change the menu very, very often. So we're tweaking every week. We probably do like 6 to 7 major overhauls throughout the year, and that's about it.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Lastly, as we wrap up, any advice to anybody out there that wants to take the path that you've taken, maybe not necessarily culinary, but just maybe the path to business ownership, the path to, even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're an intrapreneur and you want to support, somebody in their venture, and you want to kind of be like the right-hand man, what are some things that you've learned in your journey about success, learning, adjusting, pivoting, having belief in it? What are some things that you'd recommend to somebody out there that, is maybe a little cautious or has maybe a little fear, what are your thoughts there?
Well, don't let fear bring you down is the first one. It's good to acknowledge fear, and it's good to be aware of it, but don't let it consume you and don't let it discourage you, for one. Change is tough. New things are tough, but it's all a learning experience. So take those risks, take the leap. Believe in yourself always, because you can control that. Don't get too caught up in the things you can't control, because you can't control them.
Amen.
And then most importantly, work harder. Nobody cares. Like, just work harder.
There's a saying I remember, and I've never forgot it. It's like, the harder you work, the luckier you get. It's like, you know what? It's funny how that works. The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, nobody cares. Work harder.
Andres, I love this, bro.
Yeah, man.
Honestly, I knew I was gonna enjoy this conversation from like the moment we first interacted and we met.
Yeah.
I was just, I don't know, your story, our vibe, our relationship. I was like, you know what, man, you know, I couldn't wait to tell your story, you know, and Charlotte and people come in here. Listen, guys, if you guys have not come to Custom Shop, come by, support. I mean, I am all for supporting local. Stop by. You know, I mean, small business is the backbone of America. 100%, I believe that. You know, and so I'm excited, man. I'm excited for you guys, your journey, your future, in whatever endeavors that you have, man. I'm pumped for them, and I know that, you know, you will do well. Just you know, you've already made such good adjustments and learning experiences, and you've had good mentors and people to kind of shape you. And so, anyways, episode 14, season 3 in the books. Super excited for you guys. If you guys have not subscribed or anything, do that. You know, we'd love your support, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. See ya. Okay, bro, love that.
Yeah, man, it was great.
One more thing. I'm gonna do a little